Well, welcome to the Eyes on Jesus podcast with Drew and Tim. We are celebrating a very special milestone for us. It's our 100th episode, and we have on some very special guests today, which we will introduce here in just a minute. It's the one with the wives. Yes, everyone's been asking. I told my wife that everyone's been asking. She's like, "Who's been asking?" I was like, people.
Everyone.
Yeah, everyone. It's pretty clear.
All the people are wondering who we're married to, because we do reference you quite a bit. And so it's really neat. Here we are, 100th episode, and it's the first time the four of us have gotten together and done a podcast. And so I'm really excited. So yeah, Tim, this is really, really something to celebrate 100. And welcome Jamie and welcome Brynn. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and being with us. Jamie belongs to Tim and Brynn belongs to Drew. For those watching online, just in case you're wondering. But yeah, it's incredible to think back because, all of this started, Tim, because a couple years ago, you had a podcast, Eyes on Jesus, and you were really like going into your thing. You were doing a ton of interview-based content. I had my podcast, Hope After Hurt, where I was talking about how we get hurt by the church, we get hurt by leaders in church, we get hurt by all these different things. But I still have hope for the church, and I still have hope for how we move forward and how to build community. And I don't remember even how it all started, but I think you originally reached out to me to be on your pod. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be on your pod, you be on my pod. Yeah. And we did that. And then we gained some mutual friends in that podcasting. And next thing you know, it's like, man, I'm really kind of getting burnt out doing all this on my own. And you're like, I'm kind of getting burnt out doing all this on my own. It's like, well, what if we did this together? And so when you think about 100 episodes, you think about 100 hours of content, 100 hours of talking about keeping your eyes on Jesus, 100 hours of different interviews, of different books, and we've been through so much. I'm curious, out of the 100 episodes, is there a season or is there a particular line of episodes that jumps out at you where you're like, I remember when we did that interview, or I remember when we did that topic, and that was, whether it was your favorite or most impactful, or maybe it's the most you heard from, but is there something that sticks out to you when you think about the last 100?
Well, the most we heard from was our infamous parking lot episode. So that's the not necessarily my favorite, but that is the one we got the most feedback from.
Not my favorite, but certainly we learned that the parking lot is sacred to a lot of people.
Don't touch it. Don't mess with it. Yeah.
Let me wear my vest. Leave me alone.
Yeah, but I do like, calling out things in the church, and some people misinterpret it that we hate the church, and someone even said we need to go to church, which is hilarious to me that we're pastors in church all the time. And so we love the church enough to call things out. And so that's what I like, is that, I separated on our YouTube channel, I separated different playlists. So we have interview based, I think it's discipleship, and then like church leadership topics. And so that's kind of how we've, organized some of our episodes is, we do talk about the church, we talk about discipleship, how to keep your eyes on Jesus practically, and then some great interviews, where previously it was like, I need an interview every week. Now it's like, we get everyone we interview, most of them is either because we know them or because they reach out, they have a new book, and it sounds like something that we think our listeners would like. And so it's less pressure as before, where it's constantly trying to find an interview, and then, some don't turn out as well. And so now it's more like, hey, we can just chat. Also because I was totally fine giving up the podcast, but like we have so much fun talking. Like this is almost therapeutic for me, just to get on here and talk about things that, is on our mind, regardless if, just our wives listened, Sometimes the only feedback I get in an episode is from my wife. And so
sometimes you wonder, are there actually people out there? So I think that's fair. Yeah, I'm really I'm proud of the interviews we've done. I'm really proud of how we handled some difficult subjects. I think about how right when we had the idea to start, it was like, hey, we're gonna throw like the back end of COVID and then all this political stuff at you. And I think a lot of Christians were trying to figure out how to handle that, how their church should handle that. And then, how do we even on social media keep our heads right? And so I'm thankful for that season, how we went through that, how we had fun with it. Of course, we always have fun with everything. but we really, I think, guided people well through one of the more difficult seasons of pastoring and leadership that I think people have experienced. So that's something that sticks out to me. But man, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
And so 100 episodes in, we decided this would be the one with the wives. And it's gonna be great. So let's do this. Jamie, give me just a story here of how you and Tim met. Like, fill us in on how this began.
Okay, so we had been friends for a long time, and we met in high school, and we actually were dating other people. And through our high school and the beginning of college, I guess he was already graduated from high school, but so we just were good friends, ran in the same circle, but in different relationships. Both of our relationships were not good, and we recognized that about each other. Like, oh, he deserves way better. Oh, she deserves way better.
Yeah.
And so just as those relationships grew and then fizzled out, our relationship, we stayed friends, and then we kind of were separated for like a year and a half, 2 years. I didn't really see him, and then we just decided to, hey, let's meet up again just as friends. But then when we did that, it was like, huh, interesting, I think I like you. And so we started dating again. And
yes or no?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
We're going on 20 years this year, so
20
awesome
years.
Journey. Yeah, so
incredible.
Just so everyone knows, we have 2 kids, a boy who's 16, girl is 11, and this September, 20 years. So
yep.
We don't have anything planned. We'll have to come up with something. So we've been wanting to go back to Hawaii where we had our honeymoon, but life and money and all that has gotten in the way of that. But one of these days we'll get back there. So
that's
Brynn,
awesome.
why don't you tell us about you guys, how you met and about your kids and marriage?
Yeah, it's probably good that I tell this story first because he and I have very differing perspectives on it. So we were post-college. I went to NC State University, attended Hope Community Church all throughout college and after college. And he had been in Nashville for a few years and then had moved back into town because this is kind of the area where he grew up as well, and started coming to Hope Community Church. I was already part of the worship team at Hope, and he was sort of interviewing, I think, for a youth worship leader kind of position that was open at the time. And I think he more or less already had the job, but our worship director at the time, Carl, he held these annual auditions for the worship team. So even for the folks who are already on the team, he kind of had us do this recommitment sort of step every year just to show that we were dedicated for another year of service. And so we were doing that. I was there doing my annual audition. He was there to kind of show up and show his face and to show everybody that, he's kind of there for that position. And after we were all done, all the auditions were said and done, he was kind of sitting towards the back, and I approached him and sat down right beside him. And I was like, hi, I'm Brynn, and tried my best to, introduce myself and be all sweet and Southern charming. And he was just like, hey, and completely blew me off. Like, I've never been more blown off in my life. So that was our first encounter. And then a few weeks later, I was serving at our main campus worship team. And before the service started, I was kind of out in the lobby just mingling with people and, trying to connect and chat with folks. And he came up to me and he, was chatting me up about my plans for moving to another campus. And he said something along the lines of, well, if you guys ever need a drummer, I'll just take your number and you can take my number.
You know how you leverage ministry to get people's number.
Yeah.
It's really great. It was really great.
Yeah. So that's how that happened. We have been married. What did we decide? 12 years, 11 years?
12 years, 11 years, 12, 11? Is it 11?
13, 12, 12.
12.
Yeah. We just celebrated 12 years in April.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 little kids. We have a 7-year-old daughter, Rylan, and a 4, almost 5-year-old little boy, Levi. So,
yeah, it's a fun season with those kids. So she's right. If someone comes and asks how we met, I don't even bring up that first little interaction.
Right,
because
off.
I stand by this. I do not remember. And what we've decided is, or at least what I've decided is, I must have been so locked in to like Carl and this opportunity and that I'm there to audition. I don't remember much about that day other than like the song I auditioned with and that Carl was there and Bob was there who was running sound. Like that's the only thing I really remember. But yeah, she apparently sat down right next to me. I do not recall. And I will stand by that. That's what I will say one day on the stand. I'll just be like, I do not recall. And then the next time, yeah, she was out in the lobby and I went up to her. We exchanged numbers. We then served together. Mr. Matchmaker Carl had us serving at an event like 2 Saturday mornings later for like a women's event or something. And I asked her if she wanted to go get coffee after it was over. And she said she had a volleyball tournament. And I was like, who the heck plays volleyball? Like, one, I've never met anybody who played volleyball, but two, who has a volleyball tournament? Like, and so I thought she was blowing me off. I thought she was coming up with an excuse. And then after we got done Saturday morning serving, we walked outside. It was raining like crazy. And she just floats out, I bet my tournament's canceled. And then I went, so do you still want to go get coffee? And she goes, sure. And I was like, all right, really emphatic and excited about that. We went over to a Starbucks in Cary that's still there. And we sat down for like, what was it, 4 hours?
3 or 4 hours.
We had like 1 cup of coffee and we sat there for like 3 or 4 hours and talked. And literally like every day after that, we were hooked. It was all we wanted to do was talk to each other and be with each other. So
when did she find out that you couldn't believe anyone could play volleyball?
Well, I mean, I asked a lot of questions about it. I was very curious because, you know, I'm a sports guy. And then she invited me to come watch her play. And I watched her and she's playing in like a majority men's league on men's nets. And she's like owning it. So I was like, I can deal with this. Like, this works for me. She's not only playing. Yeah. I was like, not only is she playing volleyball, but she's like good at it and she's really competitive. And honestly, that was one of the funnest things about starting out and dating was watching her like in that competitive element, because, you know, I still like, that is one side that people, I think, just never see of Brynn. They don't see the cheering for Wolfpack football. They don't see that I'm out on the volleyball court and like leading and instructing and guiding people where to go and literally yelling at them at times to go and to get it. And she does the same thing for the kids. You know, she does the same thing for me. She does the same thing for all of us, but people don't really get to see that side of her. That's like one of the best things. Like, and when we were dating, when I saw that side of her, I was just like, that is like, wow, that's so incredible. You've got this like soft, introverted, kind shell, but then like deep down, she's a fighter. And it was really, really cool to find that out.
Well, that's really cool that a first impression like that wasn't a last impression, so that you pushed.
Yes.
Through, so.
I'm so glad that she pushed through. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we're going to throw some softballs to each other. Each couple will have a question or two, and then maybe some curveballs. We'll see. But
yeah, you want to start, or do you want me to throw some out?
Yeah, first one we have for you guys is, you know, being that you're in the season of life with young kids and time and stuff is a limited resource. You know, what is something you do to keep the romance alive and something you wish you could do better? So something you do well and something you wish you could do better to keep your romance alive during this time.
Yeah, I will say right now, I do feel like we are coming out of the little kid phase. The kids are gaining more independence, especially Rylan. I mean, she is so independent. And the whole fight over having a babysitter or having somebody else watch you or going somewhere else, the whole fight over mommy and daddy are going to go on a date night or dinner or whatever, like that's all kind of died down. And so getting out of that season, I think what we've noticed lately, and by lately, I mean within several months, is how important it is for us to have time to just go get dinner together and just have a date night. We'd always, Tim, we've talked about this. We've heard tons of people, get on stage and be like, every Friday night's date night at my house. And it's like, cool. We don't do that. Like we don't do that. I don't see how that's sustainable. I'm coaching a softball team whose games are on Friday nights. So we're not doing that. But we are now at a point where we can start having more of those connections, which is really good. So I would say we're moving into a season where I think that's more consistent, which is great. And then as far as just like building romance together, I think when you're not in that season and you're dealing with little kids and you're dealing with all the things they have to do, and then mentally you've got everything from one kid who's all about homework and another kid who's just trying to figure out what they can eat, what they can play, and what they can do. It's little things, it's little acts of service. It's little ways that you can connect with each other verbally and compliment one another. It's really just like, I don't know. I guess I would view it as like piercing through the chaos and really seeing each other. And I think, to me, I've just tried to be intentional of recognizing like, hey, I see that you did this, or I recognize you're doing this, or that I see, the toll that work's taking, or motherhood's taking, or this and that are taking. And I try to verbally do what I can to like pierce through all the chaos of life and all the times kids are going, mom, 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 and, let her know that she's seen. So for me, that's kind of where I see that.
And I agree with all that. The only other thing I would add is I think you do such a wonderful job at being intentional with our time. So if we do go out on a date every now and again, which is not very often, I wouldn't say that's a strength of ours, but hopefully we're getting better at it, at making that time for us. But when we do have those opportunities, whether it's out or whether it's just once the kids have gone to bed or they're outside playing, and so we have some time just to ourselves, you do such a great job of just intentionally bringing up topics that help us grow together and get closer and get deeper, as opposed to just, casual conversations. That helps us a lot, I think.
Awesome.
Okay. Questions for you. So Jamie, you have a son. How old's your son? Remind our listeners.
He's 16 years old.
16 years old. So let's say your son grows up and you get to take one character trait from Tim and give it to your son. The one character trait you would hope your son would have from Tim, what would that be?
Just one. So
there's so many to choose from.
I don't think it's humility, but
Exactly.
Let me write you a list. Hold on.
Integrity, I think, is one of Tim's just biggest strengths, and so I would like my son to see that he honors the Lord in everything that he does, everything that is seen by other people, but also most importantly, the things that are not seen. And so really being disciplined to stop and think about what he does and why he does it.
That's good. So Tim, your daughter grows up. She's going to have one character trait from Jamie. What's it going to be?
Compassion. Jamie's very compassionate, very much deals with empathy, compassion, and is very much a check for me. And when I tend to be more cut and dry, this is what you got to do. And this is, and so she's very much a check for me on that, as we both are for each other. But I think, my daughter's already that way, but she can continue to grow in that and compassion. That would be amazing.
That's awesome. So is your relationship like mine, Tim, where you'll tell your wife something you're going to say, or something you're going to post, or something that you're going to preach, or an opinion that you're going to share, and then she checks you with the compassion that she possesses, and you just kind of shut up and walk away?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. I'll say what I really feel and then never say it to the person or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's been a lot. I'll walk in her office and be like, "Hey, babe, real quick, can I say this?" And she'll just listen and then be like, "No, no, okay, all right." I'll just walk out.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Just so you know, I meant it. I felt it. I want to, but I won't.
Right. I want to, but I'm not going to do it. I love that. Okay,
Right.
very cool.
Question for you guys. So, being that you're still in it, but also, parenting two small humans that were under the age of 5 and coming out of that, like what's some parenting advice of what you've learned, maybe how you thought it'd be versus what it actually is, and then kind of what you learned along the way to maybe help people that are in that phase of life.
That's loaded.
I know.
Yeah.
One of the things recently that I try to keep in the forefront of my mind when I'm frustrated or I'm getting the sass or the attitude, especially from the older one, is ensuring that I am parenting them towards holiness as opposed to parenting them away from like my own convenience. I think that for me and probably a lot of us, a lot of the things that we correct or try to steer them away from are simply because we don't want to be bothered by it, or we feel like I'm being interrupted or being distracted from doing this or that or this. And I think the mind shift of like, what's the purpose behind that? Am I actually parenting them towards holiness in this moment and towards knowing and loving the Lord? Or, is it something else? Because if it's something else, is there really a need for it? That's kind of been on the forefront of my mind lately and seems to help kind of put things all in perspective and look at things more from the big picture as opposed to that little moment in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Brynn's right. It's a very loaded question. I've certainly discovered this is the hardest thing ever.
Definitely.
Like it's just so hard. It's helped me understand the weight of people that are entering into parenting. It's helped me become a better pastor from the standpoint of like guiding people who are like, "Yay, we're pregnant and we're going to do a gender reveal. And we're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." And I'm like, "Cool. Can we sit down and talk?" Like at some point, just want to make sure.
War veteran, like, let me tell you what it's really going to be like.
Tell you what war is really like. I just want y'all to like, y'all can stay happy. I want you to be happy. I want you to be excited, but I want you to be ready. And I don't know, I still sometimes don't know if I am or was ready. I just, it's grueling. It's very difficult. And, we've talked about this before on the podcast. I think learning your kids is hard. I think also learning who your spouse is now that they're a parent is very difficult. I think that changes greatly when women turn from wives to moms. Like that is a huge responsibility, and there should be a shift. But then having to learn that and essentially figure out, okay, this is like a whole new. It's like we talked about a minute ago. It's like, oh, Brynn's on the volleyball court now, so now it's a whole new version of her that we're experiencing here. So I think that's certainly one thing. Just trying to learn all that. To me, and again, we've hit this, but I had a moment several months ago. I was driving on the way home, and I don't remember what the emotion was. I don't remember what was going on, but I'd had like a stint of really difficult like connections with my daughter, and she was going through this emotional phase, which I'm sure it won't be the last one, where every conversation we had, it was just a fight. It was an argument. It was met with such hostility and disrespect. And I'm like, how do I parent her? And I'm like driving in the car and I'm praying and I'm just like, how do I parent her? How do I parent her? Give me the wisdom, give me the wisdom, give me the wisdom. And essentially God freed me in a lot of ways in that moment, because he was like, at least what I was hearing, what I was experiencing was, you're trying to parent your children instead of freeing me up to parent them. and recognizing the shift of, I'm not just the dad who's pointing them to Jesus. I need to, in humility, let my child be handled and parented and directed by Jesus. And then as their dad, guide them along that route. Now, you say that out loud and you're like, yeah, totally. Obviously, that's what you're supposed to do. And it's like, you do the same thing in leadership, right? Like, you don't just try to like tell somebody what God said. You like let God speak into their life and then you try to guide them in a leadership standpoint. It's like, yeah, but when it's your kid, there's tension in that, because I feel so much weight and responsibility in how they behave, in what they do, in the direction they're going. And so I've really, especially lately, like I've just let a lot of stuff go, not from a discipline standpoint, but from like things I cared about. Like I've just kind of let it go. And what I recognized is like, at the end of the day, like my daughter loves Jesus. She got baptized a couple months ago and I'm good. Like I'm set with that. And what happens now, I'm going to guide and I'm going to do everything I can to, keep her locked into that and walking towards Jesus. But, I need to kind of let go of this. I don't even know what it is. I guess it's a grip thing. I guess it's a control thing. I got to let go as a dad of feeling like I have to make sure everything's done a certain way or whatever. So that's been really freeing to me, and God revealing that to me was such an emotional moment for me in the car. I came home just like bawling. It was all about surrender. Later that night, we were hanging out with some friends of ours. They were like, how are things going with you? I started telling the story, started bawling again. Like God's really just been working on that surrender piece for me as a dad. So I don't know if that's necessarily advice as much as it is just what I'm learning, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So I had prepared kind of a similar question for you two. I'm just wondering, y'all are in a different stage, been married 20 years, you have older kids. What have you seen? And maybe even like to two people like us with a 7-year-old and almost 5-year-old, what have you seen? What have you experienced? What advice or encouragement would you offer that season?
Yeah, Jamie's really good at understanding temperaments. And so I want to have her advice on this part. But, one thing we learned is that really, you can't have a plan for the next 18 years of your life with your kids. They're very unique, and every child is unique. And you see that from a very, very young age. You see their personality, you see how they're different from another kid, because that's how God's gifted them. And also understanding that, their default personality is not an excuse either. So you have to kind of help them learn how to align that, with either the rules or authority or under the word of God. And one thing we've done is just understanding that, especially with my son, our strategy has changed based on where he's at in his walk in life and age, and discipline that's worked in the past doesn't work, in current stages.
Sure.
And he's a strong-willed kid. I mean, his name means fire of God. And so he's living up to his name. And what we prophesy over him is he's going to use that for God and to have that fire be something that purifies and doesn't consume. And so, but for now, it's tough to kind of see like, what does he need? And also realize like we have to also hold our ground on some things, because otherwise, potential to walk all over you. So it's that fine balance of, like school, for example, like Jamie homeschooled while they were young, and that was perfect for the stage of life they were in. And then now they're in a Christian school, and we had to go forth in that decision based on where they're at, what do they need, and take that before God. And so, it wasn't just like, we're going to homeschool the whole, we started homeschooling with the assumption that every year we're going to check before God and see like, is this something we're supposed to do? But Jamie, you want to talk about like temperament and how that helps us understand our kids and kind of, because I think it's a pretty cool, we've had our temperament analyzed with our counselors, Sean and Heidi, and it helps us understand our marriage. So go ahead, Jamie.
Yes. So temperament is a little different than personality. It's really like how God made you uniquely, and ways you are your strengths, but also ways that you're weak and you need to lean into the Lord. It's a biblical foundation. And so there's a lot of scripture that go with it. And So there's 3 different areas they talk about is your inclusion, how much you like to be around people and how you recharge, kind of like extrovert, introvert kind of thing. And then your control, how much control you like to have over other people and how much control you like to have are controlled by other people. And then your affection, how much you like affection. And so those are like the 3 overarching things that go into like the temperament test. And so having those done for ourselves and then having our children have taken those now, because actually my daughter just had hers taken because they say like 10 years old and up is a good age to get them tested. And so I was noticing a few things with my daughter this past several months, who's very easygoing. Like you said, she's the chill one in the family and the sweet one. But there was a couple things that I would just like make decisions for her, and she would get really frustrated with me. So I was seeing that we were reaching a point in her age where she just didn't want mom to make all the decisions for her, and she wanted a say in them. And so after a few different things where I was like, oh, okay, sorry, so sorry, need to back off. And so we got our temperament tested. And so, and it made a lot more sense. Also helped us understand how our children interact because they're very different in that, where my son has a very high need for control over anybody and everyone. And she doesn't like to control people at all, but she does not like to be controlled. And so it was interesting to see that dynamic. And so understanding how we meet them where we're at, again, coupled with a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
Just like Tim was saying, our seasons change. And I find that as my kids get older, it just feels like it's going faster because they're just doing more and more. Like my son, who's 16, there's sometimes now we feel like we're a one child parents right now because our son's got a job and he's interacting more with his friends. And so he's got a lot more outside influence. So right now, I think in our season is really making sure those foundations are solid with the Lord, and then understanding of here's how you interact with other people. This is your temperament. And so how are you going to navigate these new situations in your job and with your friendships? And as you become an adult, because we're raising adults, we're not raising children, right? They're going to grow up to be an adult. And so the goal is for them to leave our home and to be successful. And so I think the big picture for us is recognizing that, like you said, it's not about the little things so much anymore. It's about like the bigger picture. And it's been really nice too, though, because we've seen, at least for him, how he acts at home can be a struggle. But when he's been out, I've had other people say, oh, he did this and he interacted well with this. And so it's like, part of me was like, okay, he is listening. He is learning. He doesn't show it. He doesn't like to show it at home, but that foundation is there. And so it's been good. It's been very difficult at times and really requires Tim and I to have some conversations and also say, okay, where do you need to lead on this? Because Tim is very good at coming with my son with that control need, like, no, you're going to obey authority. And then I'm the one who kind of comes in, kind of like the good cop, bad cop sometimes, but, also knowing where I need to stand my ground, but also like that we're backing each other up, that we're on the exact same page. Like, no matter what you try to say to me to spin it or to him to spin it, we're going to say, no. The first thing I always say is, well, let me talk to your dad. Don't try to talk to me about what you're going to do and make a decision. I always want to talk to him first before we go forward. And so just knowing that, that our kids are different, that we as parents parent differently because of our own temperaments and how we handle that, but also bringing that unity in our relationship.
Yeah. And I'll put if anyone's interested in getting a temperament tested, it's ethoscounseling.com. I'll put a link in the show notes, but highly encourage it. You just take a test and then they go over the results and you read it and you're basically like, wow, it's like looking in a mirror, but words on a paper. You're like, wow, this is me. Yeah. And it's really helpful, especially in a marriage, to kind of see the other person, how God made them, and also how to deal with them, so that when they are acting this way, you can be like, okay, well, that's how they are, and now we need to go from there. Well, we talked about marriage and parenting. I want to kick it over to you guys for ministry. So, being that you're both in ministry, and were you weren't a pastor when you got married, right, Drew?
No, I mean, no, I wasn't, I guess. I was doing, what was I doing? Worship. I was just a worship leader. I was just one of those guys, regular old
I'm sure,
keyboard
Brynn,
player.
think that you'd be a wife of a senior pastor, probably, I'm
I did
guessing.
not,
And so,
never.
yeah. So now
Well,
that you,
we had no idea this was happening.
yeah, similar to us. Yeah. I never thought, we'd be in ministry together, especially. And so my question for you is, navigating ministry as parents, as husband and wife, what has been like a challenge that you faced? And what is something that is, you know, not joyful, but what is something, being in this intensity, with, real stakes and kingdom stakes, but also like the church is tough. And we talk about that a lot on the podcast. What's something that, maybe for others that are in ministry or like reflecting upon what it's done, both good and bad for your marriage and working through things. What is some like advice of being, a pastor's wife and a senior pastor in ministry that you would share with the audience?
I think the phase we're in with him, this is the first time he's been a senior pastor, right, or a lead pastor. And we've kind of been in the trenches of that for the past 3 years, almost exactly, because we started around Easter 3 years ago at the church. And it's very much been like a building process, not necessarily physically building, although we have done that recently, but it's been, building culture and, building the ministry basically from the ground up. And I think anytime that two people in a relationship that have that common goal of building something together, anytime you can do that, like there's a lot of closeness and celebration that can come from the successes that you see from that. So I think that's been really fun and really exciting for us to share over the last 3 years, and just being able to look back 3 years, look at where we are now, and then dream about the future of what our ministry looks like is it's a lot of fun to be able to do that together in our marriage.
Yeah, we've seen God accomplish. And I mean, there's things that nobody knows about. Like there's things that we don't get on stage and talk about, but we've seen God do in our church. That's just, it's wild. Yeah. In the terms of the lead pastor role, I think we are really, really blessed. And I don't believe everybody's like this, but I had the ability to watch my parents do this for decades. And, my dad's a pastor. My mom would be whoever she needed to be that season. So I saw my mom be a choir director, and I saw my mom be a piano player, and I saw my mom be an organist, and I saw my mom literally direct a preschool. And like, I saw my mom be whoever she needed to be while doing those things for sometimes nothing, also working a job, also working an additional job at night. Like I would watch my mom work all day, go to church, be who she needed to be, and then leave Wednesday night supper or whatever we were doing early so that she could go clean an office building for an extra little bit of cash so that like I could go to a baseball camp. And I would love to say that I saw my mom get a lot of credit for that, but I didn't. And I watched my parents have a relationship with the church where when they left different churches, this is before social media, when they left different churches, those relationships were done. And they lost friends, and we lost our friends as kids, And I think we are really, really blessed at Yes Church to have the community that we do and the people that we do, because Brynn and I set an expectation very early on. And this is, if I had to write down how to do it, this probably isn't how I would have done it, but God orchestrated it beautifully. I started part-time, and the expectations were pretty low, man. They were pretty low. Can you preach on Sundays? If you'll preach on Sundays, we'll pay you to preach on Sundays. That's kind of where we started. And everyone knew from the beginning, Brynn has a job. We have kids. She has responsibilities. And then it was like 3/4 time. And then it was like full time. And we never even really had that many people. So Brynn's involvement was like, we need you, right? We need you to fill in this gap. But for the longest time, she was just building relationships, just building trust. And I'm on my side because all I need to do is preach on Sundays. I'm just building relationships. I'm just building trust. And I just think over the last 3 years, we've built so much trust and so many good relationships. We're in just a beautiful place. I don't ever have, knock on wood here, but I don't ever have anybody come up to me asking Brynn to do more, for Brynn to do less. I don't hear complaining. Our elders don't hear it. They honor us so well. They love Brynn. They love me. We love them. And we're now, what I'm recognizing is we're really in a beautiful season of ministry too, where I think God is about to release Brynn into what I think he's been hiding for many years. Brynn is an amazing vocalist, and she's always been part of like worship teams and singing, and she's very gifted in that way. But then when we had kids, she really recognized I need to be a mom right now, and getting to rehearsals early on Sunday mornings and getting kids ready and stuff like it's just not going to work. And so she's been kind of, I want to say she's been kind of hidden for a while. And lately, God's really been leaning on me to recognize the voice that she has, not from singing, but from the grace that comes from stage and the kindness that comes from her lips and the wisdom that she speaks. And so I think we're about to enter a really beautiful season of Brynn's ministry. And so I'm actually thinking and in the prayer closet trying to figure out how to get Brynn going again, because I think she's anointed to do it. But as you know, there's usually a gap between anointing and announcement. And I think the announcement is coming. I think Brynn's been in process, and I think she's been gaining some wisdom and some ideas over the last few years. And I think the announcement of her and what she brings is really coming. So yeah, trust is so important in ministry. Trust with each other, trust with your congregation. You got to build that. And we've just been so fortunate. So I mean, as you know, there's good and bad that can come from it. Yep. We've been really blessed. We've been really blessed to have the congregation that we have.
That's great.
I got a quick question for you guys. Brynn and I were talking about this the other day. I don't know how people do marriage. I don't know how people do life without Jesus. I don't get it. I don't know how you can do it. I don't know how you get through things. And maybe that's why you don't get through things. Maybe that's why people who don't set up a biblical marriage don't get through it sometimes. But I'm curious, what's a moment or maybe a couple moments or something where without Jesus being at the front of your marriage, without Jesus being at the front of your family, you just don't think you don't think you could have gotten through that. It kind of popped up for Brynn and I the other day, and I know everybody kind of has some of those seasons. So I don't want to get, I don't want you to share anything you don't want to share for sure. But was there a moment in the last 20 years where you're like, man, I'm so thankful that we had our relationship with Christ, because otherwise I don't know what we would have done.
Yeah, I mean, tons of moments for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Anything come to mind? I know I have a few, but I don't know.
For me, well, it would be infertility and our miscarriage. That one is probably one of the ones where it was something I had to walk through, expectations that I had, that I felt like God had for us, and just going through grief together, knowing things were out of our control and having to really trust the Lord in his sovereignty, and that he was there through every broken heart and every moment, that it was just felt really, really difficult. And so I'm grateful to the Lord for bringing us through those moments.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, I lost my mom 2 years ago, and she was a big part of our family, and so key in our kids' lives. And I think, but for Jesus, knowing where she is and how much wisdom she shared on her journey and how close she was to him, if it wasn't for that, then there would be no hope, and you'd just be mourning something, knowing you'd never see her again. And so I think that's super helpful. Also, things like, I had a secular job for 24 years. It was super stressful. And I think, but for Jesus, that could have easily destroyed our marriage, because the amount of stress I had and the amount of hours I put into it could have easily led me down paths where Some people turn to, addictions or, things that I never really entertained, but also I know that in the midst of the stress and toughness of it all, like I know that Jesus kept me through it, even though it wasn't pretty sometimes. I think that something like that could have easily destroyed a marriage.
Yeah.
If you give over to just quick fixes to make you feel better in the moment, So good question.
Good.
So yeah, let's leave it open for if anyone has rapid fire, favorite date that you guys have had. Go.
I love Fenton. There's a place in Cary called there's a place in Cary called Fenton, and they have really good restaurants, and it's just a good spot. That's my favorite. We're doing rapid. I was not prepared for rapid fire.
Yeah. What's a trip that you would like to take in the future?
I would love to go to Greece.
Greece, really? Greece?
Yeah. And Hawaii.
And Hawaii, yes.
I knew that one.
Sounds like we could ask you guys for tips on Hawaii. So.
Yeah. I want to go back to Banff. I just want to go back.
Been to Banff.
I just want to go back there. Can we do that again?
I've heard so much about Banff.
I'm sure you have.
Literally earlier when you were talking about 20 years coming up and we got to do something, I was like,
Banff.
Yeah, that's solid. Okay.
I know we want to take a Alaskan cruise, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
We took a cruise in 2019 down to Mexico, and like Alaska's on our to-do list.
Yeah.
It's going to happen one of these days.
It's good.
Awesome.
It's good. What? Okay. What's something comical? Let's keep it comical. What's something comical that the other person does that under the right circumstances gets on your nerves?
I know why you're asking.
I know why you're asking this.
I know why you're asking.
No,
He really wants to share.
So that you can answer.
that's not what.
Called out.
I just asked a random question. I was told to ask a random question, and it's to Jamie and Tim, so you don't even have to answer. Neither do I.
I would say Tim has a very dry sense of humor, and most of the time it's very entertaining because especially when other people don't know how to take him. But then at some point it gets annoying because I feel I'm cringing because like if he's talking to somebody, he just goes with it, and like we're in this new scenario and the people don't know how to take it. So I feel like I finally have to just intervene and be like, he's just
not
joking.
Serious. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love that though. If I get someone going and they actually think I'm serious about something that's completely random, then I'm like, I got you, and I can keep going. And
yeah, I saw that when we were at the conference in Georgia. There were a couple moments where I'm like, wait, y'all are still talking? And he's like, yeah, no, we're gonna spend some time here. We're gonna spend some time.
Yeah.
That's solid. See, I didn't even answer, honey.
Well, you can tell me off air. How about that?
No, you already know. You already know. It's all good.
Okay. Anything, ladies, you'd like to ask? Burning questions. Something you would like to see us discuss on the Eyes on Jesus podcast with Drew and Tim.
Longer.
Or what's your favorite episode?
There was one that you guys did. This was a while back, but I remember that there was a specific clip about getting in the word for yourself and not just, relying on podcasters or influencers or your pastor or anything like that. And really listening for God's voice for yourself. I really liked that one. And I think my family did too. Family meaning like my brother and my mom and all that. So awesome. That was meaningful for me because, I knew that they were being reached. So
yeah.
I like them all, but
of course.
I just remember one that stuck out to me was, I think it was the season we were in too, was when you were just kind of venting about like how people could be offended about little things and sharing stories. And the way you interact too is, I love it to see both of your personalities come out and how you bring out the best in each other and play off each other. But that one, I think I just liked because first of all, I was going through the same things, being in ministry together, hearing the same kind of offensive things, and also knowing that you have a place that you can share.
Yeah.
And hear that.
That's mostly how we come up with topics is like, I dealt with this week. I need to talk about it on Friday.
Yeah. He's like, any ideas for the show this week? I'm like, well, I just got this email. So what if we did that? Yeah. What if we talked to that guy? What if we did that?
Yeah.
So, sweet.
Awesome.
Well, we love y'all. We thank you so much. We talk about you all the time on air and off air.
Yes.
And I think
all good things.
Yeah, I think absolutely all good things. There's that dry sense of humor. No, but we do. I think Tim and I both recognize how important y'all are, and I think we both credit you for what God's been able to do in our lives, and we certainly couldn't do it without you. So thank you for not just the support on ministry, but thank you for the support on the podcast. And speaking of support, you can go to kingdomandwill.com and use code Eyes on Jesus for 15% off. Right. Get your merch, man. Get your merch. Softest t-shirts I own. Mm-hmm. Softest t-shirts I own. I have had to move up a size. I need to get in the gym. I've gone from the medium to the large. I need to work on that.
Maybe it's just your muscles.
I don't think that's it.
Muscle mass.
I think it's Easter candy. And what really put me over the edge was when Brynn and my daughter decided to make a cake. They made a cake, and I ate a lot of it. It was a big cake.
It looked like a cheeseburger. It's really cute.
It looked like a cheeseburger. It was a very large cake, and I ate a lot of it. So, Tim, sign us off, man.
Well, thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed these 100 episodes or just this episode, please like and share. We appreciate the support. We plan on going strong for another 100, right, Drew?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that's our plan. We hope you're here for the ride. If there's something you'd like to see us discuss on a future episode, email us at eyesonjesuspodcast@outlook.com. And we love your feedback and support as we keep this going. So until next time, go with God, grow in discernment, and keep your eyes on Jesus.
Thanks for joining us on the Eyes on Jesus podcast with Drew and Tim. Don't forget to hit subscribe